It's now time for the Billy C. Show, part of the BillyCBoxing.com network.
And we're coming to you live from the Billy C. Studios in Lake George, New York. I'm Bill Calogero, and it's time for the Billy C. Show. Good morning, good day, good evening. Whenever you're watching, whenever you're listening, I hope you're doing okay today. Today's show, she's being brought to you in a part by Sal's Neighborhood Pizzeria and Italian Restaurant located on St. Simon's Island in Georgia. Check out the website, www.salsneighborhoodpizzeria.com, or feel free, give my man a call, 912-268-2328, 912-268-2328. Find out why I go all the way to St. Simon's for an authentic Italian meal. Today's show is also being brought to us in part by our 24-hour, 7-day-a-week television channel. That's right. You can now check out our channel, which is on all the major streaming services. Not only do you get to watch replays of this show, but also all of our special events for the past 15 years. Check it out if you haven't already. All the information can be found at GinikoUSA.com, GINIKO USA.com. Today's show is also being brought to us in part by the Title Bout Championship computer game. Check it out. Visit our website, BillyCBoxing.com, and click on the Title Bout banner. Download yourself a copy right now. It's a simulation game. You could put today's champions against yesterday's champions. It's a great game. It's not a video-oriented game, although there is video, but it's really fun to put up, a guy like Muhammad Ali against Klitschko or against Anthony Joshua or Tyson Fury. Check it out. Today's show is also being brought to us in part by my book. Tom Molyneux, From Bondage to Baddest Men on the Planet, is available right now where all good books are sold, and you get a copy of this book right now while you're watching or listening to this very show. Just visit BarnesandNoble.com or Amazon.com. Find out why I'm so adamant about getting Tom Molyneux's story told. And finally, today's show is being brought to us in part by Canelo Alvarez against Sergey Kovalev. Get yourself some tickets if you want to be in Las Vegas at the MGM Grand for when Canelo tries to be the fourth Mexican fighter to achieve 4 different world titles in 4 different weight classes against ranked number 1 in the world by the computer, Sergey Kovalev, for Kovalev's world light heavyweight title. Check it out. If you can't be ringside, don't worry about it. Make sure you sign up for DAZN. It's $20 a month, and they got all the best fights. Visit our website, BillyCBoxing.com, and click on the fight banner, which you'll see on the right-hand side. All right. Programming note, we will not be doing a live show for next week or the week after, but we will return the week after the Canelo Kovalev fight to give you our post-fight thoughts. So it'll be a good chance for you to catch up on some of our shows that you might have missed. For all our radio affiliates, they will have content for you, so don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Before we get started today, our condolences, thoughts, and prayers go out to the family and friends of Patrick Day. If you recall, Patrick Day suffered a brain injury and ultimately succumbed to it on Wednesday. So our thoughts and prayers go out to the family of Patrick Day. It's a sad reminder of the risks that every fighter takes when they step into the ring. No question about that at all. So anyway, first thing I want to talk about is the great light heavyweight fight that we witnessed on Friday night. Artur Beterbiev knocked out Alexander Gvozdyk in the 10th round in what I thought was one of the most exciting fights of the year. I loved it, My man, Iceman Scully, John Scully, told me a while ago. It has to be. Must have been working with Beterbiev now for at least 2 years. Told me he was one of the hardest punching guys that he's ever worked with, and he certainly showed it in this fight. It was an action-packed fight. Gvozdyk was trying to use his boxing skill, which he clearly had an advantage over, but Beterbiev wouldn't take that. Just kept cutting the ring off and working the body of Gvozdyk, which seemed to hurt him. He was also, Gvozdyk was having trouble with distance. You heard Teddy Atlas telling him that in the corner. I tell you, Beterbiev just broke him down and then ultimately knocked him out. The official time was 2 minutes and 49 seconds of the 10th round. He had been down 3 times in that round, and a combination of taking a beating up to that point and running out of gas, I think all added it. The one thing that was interesting to me was that at the time of the stoppage, two of the three judges had the fight in Gvozdyk's favor. I can't see it. One judge had it 87-84 for Gvozdyk. The other one had it 86-85 for Gvozdyk, and then the third judge had it 87-83 for Beterbiev. That's the way I saw it. I thought that Beterbiev was clearly winning the fight, landing the harder punches. I don't like to go with the punch stats, but he was throwing less punches but landing more. His percentage was, according to the people tracking it, his percentage was higher. It goes back to what we're always saying. I mean, when you score in a fight, what would you rather see? Volume of punches, pitter-pat, or maybe half the punches thrown, but substantial power. I guess it's all in the matter of how a judge prioritizes their scorecards, which I think is half the problem with the scoring. I think we need to prioritize it and make it part of the criteria, not just the criteria that everyone knows and follows. But I was shocked to see that he was behind. I thought he was winning the fight. I thought it was close in the beginning, but from like the 4th round on, even stretch it to the 5th, I thought Beterbiev was taking over the fight. It certainly seemed that way. The way Teddy Atlas was speaking with him in the corner. And it was also interesting. Normally, I listen to the corners, but both corners were saying the same thing to their fighter to take advantage of. In other words, Teddy Atlas was telling Gvozdyk, "Hey, you're throwing the jab too close. You're right in the spot for a counter. Make sure you don't throw your punches when you're in too close. Work your distance." And then Beterbiev's corner was saying, "Listen, he's in there tight. He's open for the counter punch. So it was pretty cool to see that they both saw the same thing. One was encouraging his fighter because they wanted to take advantage of the mistake, whereas the other one was telling their fighter, hey, listen, be careful. One other thing I want to point out about that fight was that I thought it was extremely funny how Timothy Bradley and Dre. You know Dre, right? You might know him as Andre Ward, but now he's Dre. He's just Dre. When you're dealing with an ESPN boxing broadcast, it's Dre, not the rapper, just Dre, like as in Andre Ward, Andre Dre. Both of these guys, they were both giving credit during this fight to both Beterbiev and Gvozdyk for fighting each other. And they were citing things like, they both, under 20 fights and blah, blah, blah. And the thing is that they were accurate. And they were also accurate. I'm talking about Timothy Bradley and Dre. They were both accurate with the fact that, both fighters not only were seeking their own legacies, so to speak, but they also were trying to prove that they were the best, and they wanted to fight the best fighters. And they went on to say how some of these Ukrainian and Russian fighters always seek out the best. And, they both said a couple of times, they're not, they're risking. I give them credit for fighting risky fights, And even Dre Ward at one point said, A lot of fighters now try to just cement their legacy and play it safe to a world title. And I'm saying to myself, wait a minute. Since when do we accept that? That's the problem. I was talking to Sal. We're going to get Sal Rocky Senucci on the phone here in a minute. But I was talking to him off air yesterday, and I was saying to him, what? Since when do we give credit to fighters for playing it safe and getting a title and still have them in a position to create a legacy to begin with? And I blame that on us, the fans. Not the old fans like me, but some of you young fans out there that are actually accepting the fact that young fighters basically take the easiest road to a title. Don't we have to make them fight the tougher fights? Why do we have to be so surprised when young fighters like Beterbiev and Gvozdyk actually fight each other so early on? The problem I'm having is that that people are accepting it. That fans are accepting the fact that this is taking place. That's where I have an issue with it. I feel that that we should have these fighters actually fight the real fights. You know what I mean? I don't get it. To be honest with you. I don't get the fact that, the fan has accepted it. Really the only way to prove that you're the best is actually to fight the best, or at least fight fights, real fights. I was just shocked at the commentary for that. But great fight. Beterbiev stops Gvozdyk in the 10th round. Joining us right now to get his thoughts is my man, Sal Rocky Senucci. Good morning, Sal.
Good morning, Billy C. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing well, my man. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Everything's coming out great, and I'm feeling strong.
That's my man. I knew you would. Did you get a chance to? I know we talked yesterday. The Beterbiev Gvozdyk fight. What'd you think?
I thought it was a great fight. I think Gvozdyk had his moments, and he looked like he was a little bigger on some level, but he definitely didn't have that wheelhouse kind of momentum of throwing those combinations tight and compact like Beterbiev did. And with that being said, Beterbiev ultimately was a stronger, more tenacious fighter.
What did you see in the fight? Did you notice anything? Did you see? I thought that Beterbiev, his aggressiveness clearly wore down Gvozdyk, and Gvozdyk had the better boxing ability, but he just couldn't utilize it to keep this kid off him.
No, and what you said is exactly what I witnessed and what I feel. Gvozdyk was constantly making the fight happen, taking the fight to Beterbiev at times. He had his moments, but he couldn't sustain a level of that intensity and that desire. So I think, Beterbiev was smart, did his time, and towards the end, it was just like, okay, an uphill battle for Gvozdyk, and Beterbiev went on clearly to win by stoppage in that 10th round.
You and I talked yesterday, and I was telling you, and I just was talking about it here on the show, that it's kind of depressing to me to hear, guys like Andre Ward and Timothy Bradley giving kudos to both of these fighters for fighting each other such early, so early on in their careers, their pro careers. They both had extensive amateur careers. And I agree, but it got me thinking about how the fan base, specifically the newer fans, have accepted the fact that other fighters take the non-risk road to a title opportunity. And to me, taking risks and fighting the tough fights is really what boxing's all about. What's your thoughts on, these comments that both of these guys made, and the sad fact that there are fans out there that accept fighters taking an easier road?
Well, I'll tell you, we've had a trouble streaming of late, and I actually listened to the Ukrainian announcers, and kind of what I like about that is I don't get influenced by the commentary, and so I didn't hear what the side said. I just listened to a lot of Ukrainian language.
Hey, were you surprised, because I certainly was, that two of the three judges had Gvozdyk substantially ahead? Well, one had him ahead by 1 point, but one of the judges had him ahead 87-84 at the time of the stoppage. I had it the other way around. I thought that Beterbiev took over that fight and was wearing Gvozdyk down. I saw the writing on the wall. Were you surprised to see that two of the three judges actually had Gvozdyk ahead?
I was very surprised, and I thought maybe Adeline Bird was connected to the fight, but but no, I was surprised because, like you said, there was a good ebb and flow. Gvozdyk was in the fight, especially through the middle of the fight, and then it just seemed Beterbiev started getting the punches in the wheelhouse and really connecting and hurting Gvozdyk. And so I was surprised, by the judges' score, and that, it's a matter of opinion, but I mean, we're talking about professionals that take this by round, and I didn't see it the way they did. I saw it the way you saw it.
Well, Artur Beterbiev, and he picked up both titles. It was unification fight. He's now the WBC and IBF World Light Heavyweight Champion. And in a couple of weeks, we're going to see Canelo challenge Sergey Kovalev for Kovalev's WBO World Light Heavyweight title. And ironically enough, at least as of this morning, the computers rank Sergey Kovalev as the #1 light heavyweight in the world. Sal, I know you've become a big Canelo fan over the last year. What's your thoughts on this fight? We're want to try and give it a breakdown and get your predictions. I mean, how do you see the fight going, and what does each fighter need to do to win?
All right. Well, of course, Kovalev needs to just stay away from Canelo and outbox him, counter him, and protect his belly. But that he can only do for a few rounds. And I'm going to tell you this. My prediction is the fight doesn't go past 6 rounds. I think we've all watched Canelo Alvarez evolve into a freaking beast and monster. And what I mean by that, he's got an arsenal and an armor around his body that he could take punishment. He could definitely dish it out. I think Kovalev, in all due respect, he had his day. He had his moment. But, muscle memory. He realizes what it is to be hurt. And he realizes what it is to be stopped. And, those memories, you could somewhat always welcome them. Not welcome them, but you could always find yourself in familiar territory that you could relinquish or relent a little bit easier if you're hurt. And I think that's going to be the case with Kovalev. I think he'll have his moments in the early round, but I think as we watched evolve, that Canelo Alvarez is an ultimate fighter right now. He is a beast, and I'll see him stopping Kovalev. He'll hurt, he'll knock down, he'll knock out Kovalev if the referee doesn't stop it. But I don't see it going past 6 to 7 rounds. But I could be wrong.
Now you mentioned. Well, that's the beauty of boxing, Sal. You mentioned a specific word, and I'm going to call you out on it right now, live. You think Sergey Kovalev has a yellow streak in him, don't you?
I think it's not so much the yellow streak, because I surely don't really believe he got a yellow streak. But I know, the old muscle memory. When you're in a familiar territory, sometimes if you don't have the fight to go on and surpass it, it's easier for you to relinquish and feel the familiarity of a spot you've been before. And like I said, Canelo hasn't been in that spot. The only thing, and believe me, I still believe in my heart of hearts that Triple G won both of those fights against Canelo. But that's his evolution into the warrior he is. And I see that mentality in Canelo Alvarez overtaking the familiarity that Kovalev may remember when he gets tagged by Canelo.
Well, Canelo hasn't demonstrated the same knockout power as he's moved up in weight. The last times he was really, demonstrating that, although he did knock out Rocky Fielding, he his power was more prevalent, in the junior middleweight class. Now he's fighting a 175-pounder. I think another fight that sticks out for me is the Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. fight. Now, Chavez has a granite chin, but was a bigger fighter. And again, Canelo went the distance. So, I think it's a matter of if Canelo can work the body of Kovalev. If so, Canelo should win the fight. If he can't get in that close, Sal, it's going to be a long night for Canelo.
Oh, yeah, it could be. It could be, and believe me, Kovalev could make me eat crow. And, I'd say, well, damn, I guess I had that one wrong. But, I just, maybe I'm too much high on Canelo. But as you and I have criticized him through the years, he's evolved to be a complete fighter. I really feel that he's one of the best out there today.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to argue with that. He's clearly in as one of the top pound for pound fighters. There's no question about it. But Sal, I appreciate your thoughts, and we'll be looking forward to you next time, my friend.
Well, thank you, my friend, and I appreciate having the opportunity to share my thoughts with the fans and yourself. Thank you very much, guys. Everybody, God bless. Take care.
All right, brother. I'll talk to you during the week.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
All right. That's Sal Rocky Senucci giving us his thoughts. A couple other quick things I wanted to go over real quick before we take a short break and we're scheduled to get Dax on. Errol Spence, we talked about his crash a couple weeks ago. He's doing okay. But it's been official. Dax had mentioned last week that there were reports out that he was driving while under the influence. Well, he was officially charged with a DWI as his alcohol content was falling into the DWI category. This is, what bothers me about this is that Errol Spence, he's got all his talent, and he's seemingly making some similar mistakes that others have. He was a guy that was on the way, but here's the thing. Just before it was officially announced by the police that they were charging him, he came out with a statement on social media that said, "Hey, no broken bones, I'm a savage." And then as soon as they charged him with DWI, it was advised that he take that off. The glorification of people doing these kinds of things is the sad part. Accidents will happen, and not only will people be under the influence or something like that, it could be totally the opposite. Someone else could have been under the influence and hit him going home. But anytime you hear a superstar athlete doing something at 3 in the morning, chances are you're not going to hear good news about it. And speaking of charges, it was made official also earlier this week that Artis Mack, who's the brother of Clarissa Shields, has officially been charged with assault with the intent to do great bodily harm, which is slightly less than murder, according to the Flint, Michigan police. But he has been charged and is under arrest right now for the assault on 68-year-old Bashir Ali James. and we'll see what happens with that. That is one of the sad parts of boxing when acts like this are glorified, and I think that in a sense they were. And shortly after that, we got the message that Clarissa Shields won Woman of the Female Boxing of the Year, Woman Boxer of the Year award. Anyway, one other thing I wanted to mention before I take a break, a couple of news tidbits here for you. It was announced that Terence Crawford will be fighting on December 14th against his mandatory title challenger, Mean Machine Kovalev, at Madison Square Garden. I've been saying this all along. Terence Crawford has been loyal to Top Rank and Bob Arum, but Terence Crawford should be a household name. Terence Crawford, pound for pound, number one in the world, at least tied, as far as I'm concerned, being number one in the world. This is a talented, extremely talented fighter. I have him tied with Vasily Lomachenko, and then I have Canelo sitting at number two by himself. But, I don't think that Top Rank or Bob Arum is doing Terence Crawford any favors. Listen, no disrespect to Kovalev, and I'm probably murdering his name, and I understand that it is a mandatory, but there are so many bigger fights for Terence Crawford, and this is a guy that's not afraid to fight anybody. Remember, he started his career as the B-side and finally earned and fought his way to being an A-side fighter. I just think that greed on Bob Arum and Top Rank's part is keeping Crawford away from these big money fights. This guy deserves a big money fight. I don't think he's made $5 million yet for a fight. And he should be in the discussions to fight an Errol Spence or another big name fighter. I know they're trying to hold out and have him fight Manny Pacquiao, but Manny Pacquiao is not a fighter that should be fighting Terence Crawford. I think, to be honest with you, I think that Manny Pacquiao's only opponent should be a rematch with Floyd Mayweather. Other than that, I think that he should retire. He's got nothing else left to prove. But I'm a little disappointed in the team around Terence Crawford. The guy deserves a big money fight, in my opinion, and I know he would fight anybody they put in front of him. One other thing I'm going to mention, and we'll take a short break, is there was a purse bid for the heavyweight European title, and Marco Huck is going to be taking on Joe Joyce. This fight, I'm not sure exactly when it's going to be, but I don't know what I think about this fight. It is going to, the European heavyweight title is vacant, so it is going to be for that. Marco Captain Huck, as you hopefully recall, he was a dominating force in the cruiserweight division, did move up to heavyweight. Joe Joyce is a young, powerful fighter. I like the fact that they are fighting each other, but it kind of flew under the radar. So we'll see what happens with that. And another thing I wanted to point out is in terms of European boxing, Martin Murray, remember him? He's the mandatory. He's been named the mandatory for the European middleweight champ, Matteo Sigonelli. So we'll see what happens with that. Sigonelli's 40 years old, and Martin Murray is around that age as well. So we'll see what happens in that fight. It looks like it'll take place in Italy. So anyway, hey, listen, I'm going to take a short break. When I come back, we're scheduled to have Dax Khan join us. Don't go nowheres.
Billy C will be right back.
Snacking has never been this exciting. At Graze.com, we combine wholesome ingredients with the flavors we all love. 36, and we'll mail your free box to your home or office. Join thousands of grazers already in love with our exciting snacks. So come to graze.com for your first box free.
Need relief from backaches and stiffness in your hips or down your legs? Then you need Dr. Ho's Back Relief Belt, the innovative technology to support and decompress your spine. And now it's covered by Medicare.
Every patient with back pain should be wearing this belt.
Nothing gave me instant relief except for the Dr. Ho belt.
Feel good while standing, walking, driving, doing housework, and while laying down. And now Dr. Ho's patented belt is available at our best price ever. It's even covered by Medicare. Order now and get the easy-to-use hand pump and back rehabilitation DVD free.
You know, similar belts can cost you almost $1,000, but my belts won't cost you $500, not $300, not even $200. I will give you my special TV price.
And remember, Dr. Ho's belt is covered by Medicare.
If you know a friend or family member that suffers with pain, get them my system today. Help them live with less pain, be more active, and get back to doing the things they love. Give them the gift of health.
Listen to this important message. If you owe money to the IRS, you will want to hear this. Penalties and interest compound daily on your back taxes, putting you under a mountain of debt. Tax 10,000 has years of experience connecting people with tax resolution specialists. Working through the IRS Fresh Start program, they will handle all the necessary forms, and if you qualify, you may end up saving thousands of dollars. Call Tax 10,000 at 800-773-4604.
Endless pools are an incredible alternative to traditional pools, making it easy and inexpensive to size your
Or feel the wrath of the mighty mustache.
Oh, that hurts! Why are you doing that to my face? I hate you.
That's BillyCBoxing.com. Consider this your warning. Now back to Billy C. Interact with the show at BillyCBoxing.com.
And we're back. You're watching and listening to the Billy C. Show. Glad you could be with us. And don't forget, show up and to the Canelo Kovalev fight in Las Vegas. If you can't go out there, make sure you order the Zone for $20 a month, all the big fights. And Canelo's going to try and capture his fourth world title in 4 different weight classes to be the fourth Mexican to do so. But right now we're going to talk about another light heavyweight fight that I thought was fantastic. Joining us right now is my man Dax Khan. Good morning, Dax.
Yeah, good morning, Billy C.
How you doing, my man?
I'm doing well on this early Sunday morning.
Yeah, well, you know, the funny thing is we're going to start talking about it's cold, it's snowing here, it's snowing there, you know, but anyway, you know, that's coming quick. This year flew by, really, if you think about it, but what a great...
That's because we're getting old, Bill.
That's right. Well, I'm older than you. I'm glad you're seeing it.
But the older we get, the faster these years go by.
That's what I hear. That's what I hear. That's scary because they're going to be like a light switch for me, but... Artur Beterbiev knocked out Alexander Gvozdyk on ESPN the other night, and I thought it was a fantastic show. And what did you think of the fight?
It was a fantastic fight. It lived up to expectations, in my opinion. You know, we've seen Beterbiev do exactly what he does. You know, he comes forward, he's relentless with his pressure, he breaks his man down until they will. You know, by exactly what he does, I know a lot of people be like, well, of course he does what he does. Means that, you know, Beterbiev, you know, most guys, when you're fighting, when 2 opponents at that elite level are fighting each other, at least one of them has to, you know, change their game plan a little bit. Either they got to be a little more defensive minded, or they have to pick up their work output, or they have to be on their toes a little more. Beterbiev is able to just go out there and never change his game plan because he's just so strong. And, you know, I don't know, did you catch in that fight? You know, Beterbiev has some really subtle defensive moves. A lot of times you would see in there when Gvozdyk was throwing his run, Beterbiev would pull back just a little bit and counter. I never noticed that in Beterbiev before.
Yeah, you know, it's funny you say that. He didn't do it until like the second half of the fight, but he had some pretty cool head movement. Not only was his head moving, but it was kind of like his upper body where his feet were planted, but he was able to move back and forth from his waist up, which I thought was making it difficult for Gvozdyk to connect punches. I thought Beterbiev took over that fight after the fourth round. I was shocked to see two of the three judges. I know I got some having Gvozdyk ahead. I know I got some people in the chat room that disagree. They think that Gvozdyk was winning the fight. What was your thoughts?
A lot of people had Gvozdyk ahead, surprisingly, and I didn't think he was really ahead. I thought it was very close. Again, you stated earlier, what do you prefer? Do you prefer volume punching or do you prefer those hard punches? There were times where Gvozdyk was doing some really good work, but because of how strong Beterbiev is, and we've seen this with other opponents, his offense, at times, is his defense because guys become hesitant to let their hands go. And that's what you've seen with Gvozdyk. He hesitated to let his hands go. There were some times when he landed some solid combinations. You mentioned Beterbiev when he started using his body movement in the second half of the fight. I think it was round 6 when Gvozdyk really landed a good straight right that kind of, stunned Beterbiev a little bit. And that's when we seen him moving around, with his upper body and showing that defense. So, it was a great fight. Beterbiev, in my opinion, Bill, at 175 pounds is the man. I don't know who can really debate that. He's got 2 of the major titles. I still say Dimitri Bivol is the most skilled fighter at 175 pounds, but I just can't see him beating Artur Beterbiev off that back foot. And the Bob Arum quote after the fight, what did you think of that? Or did you hear the Bob Arum quote after the fight? I know that I think it was Michael Woods that interviewed him that got this quote. I think it was Michael Woods.
I did not hear it. What did he say now?
All right, so he was asked, after tonight, do you think it's a shame that Kovalev's fighting Canelo next rather than Beterbiev in the unification bout? And so Aaron replied, it would have been selfish of me to say he should have made himself available to get the shit kicked out of him by Beterbiev.
Is that what he said? That's
what it is. Reply.
The funny thing is that I just was mentioning about Arum and what I feel he's doing to Terence Crawford. It's funny how he always criticizes or gets a couple of jabs here and there. But the truth of the matter is Terence Crawford, and I'm not taking anything away from the light heavyweights, and I agree with you. Bivol seems to be the guy. I think he's too small for Beterbiev. I really do. I think he's in the wrong weight class, but that's another story. I just think that Bob Arum needs to step it up with Terence Crawford. Crawford deserves a big money fight, not this next fight that he's assigned in December.
Well, I agree, and it's actually hurting Terence Crawford's marketability because what I'm starting to see is a lot of fans that were big Terence Crawford fans and would have at no point in time said he was anything less than number 2 on the pound-for-pound list are starting, to complain about, who's he really fighting? He's not fighting these top names out there, and then when you're comparing the other guys in the welterweight division, the other top names in the welterweight division, they are fighting each other, and Terence Crawford is fighting guys like Amir Khan or his next opponent. So Bob Arum is really hurting Terence Crawford all around. He should be a household name by now.
Right, and he's making money, but I think he's not giving Terence Crawford the opportunity to make that huge money, which I think he deserves. But anyway,
especially because Errol Spence has been in 2 pay-per-views now.
That's my point. Those two guys should already be on a collision course, and they both avoid each other's name in any kind of a discussion. But
Terence Crawford did tell Errol Spence to take off the panties and let's make a fight.
Yeah, but and then what? Errol Spence is who's he fighting? Danny Garcia next, right? So
yeah, so it's boxing. They're marinating it.
Yeah. Oh God. Hey, listen. Let's get back to Beterbiev Gvozdyk real quick. I couldn't help but listen to both Timothy Bradley and Andre, talk about how much credit they were giving these guys for fighting each other, which I agree. But what bothered me was that it's almost like they've accepted, and a lot of fans have accepted, that other fighters choose to take a safe, non-risky route to a title, And it scares me that so many people think that's okay. What's your thoughts?
Well, again, that's something that a lot of people had noted too. These crazy scorecards by them. Timothy Bradley. 1 minute he's talking about the good work that Gvozdyk is doing, and then the very next minute he's talking about how dominant Beterbiev is. Andre Ward is doing the same thing. It's more or less, I think, that the two of them, because if you've listened to them in the past, they've done better jobs. I think that sometimes both Andre Ward and Timothy Bradley feel a little bit pressured, to say what the network and the promoter more or less wants them to say.
Well,
we've seen that with a lot of people. We've seen that with our man Larry Hazard. Larry Hazard gets a lot of the same criticism.
I think that Gvozdyk was going to win this fight on the scorecard should he made it to the final bell, because the judges were going that way. People that are disagreeing with me, I think that Beterbiev was winning the fight. And the people that disagree with me, all they have to do is listen to the corners. Now, sometimes the corners are a bunch of rah-rah men, and sometimes you're getting, good instruction. I think that the messages that both corners were doing was explaining and basically showing where the fight was. Teddy Atlas kept telling Gvozdyk, you're in too close. You're throwing your jab. You're too close. You're getting hit with the counterpunch. So in a sense, he's trying to make a correction to avoid Gvozdyk from getting punched. And then over in the other corner, they're saying he's coming into you too close. He's open for the counter. He's right there. Let your right go. And that was the dictation of that fight. I thought that they were both corners were accurate in what they were saying to their fighters. What do you think?
Yes, Teddy Atlas and Mark Ramsey are both no-nonsense guys, and they make great adjustments with their fighters. Teddy Atlas, one of the beauty parts about him is when he does need to make a rah-rah speech to get his man going, he does. But the task that was going on in front of him was one of those where you just have to stay completely focused at all times. That's how dangerous Beterbiev is. He's not one of those things where you can just pump your man up and have him go out there and look for that knockout. So, both of them, they both did, a great corner. And you bring up a valid point. A lot of times when it's a good corner, when you listen to that corner is telling you the story of the fight. Exactly.
And that's what I was, that was my point. Both corners were telling you the story, and which with the same fight I was watching, they were talking about,
Or even more so is when, in certain networks, especially DAZN, when they're trying to get those in between the round interviews, when the trainer really doesn't want to talk, can't talk, or kind of, seems bothered when they're talking, that's how you know that trainer, their guy isn't quite doing what they want them to do, because, they're focused. So there's a lot of ways to tell the story of a fight besides listening to the announcers if you're not really sure exactly what's going on in front of you.
One last thing on this fight I wanted to get your thoughts on, and we'll move on. But the referee, Gary Rosado, I'm not so sure how I feel he did in that fight, and I'll tell you why. Beterbiev, to me, was trying his best to prevent Gvozdyk from holding him. Every time that Gvozdyk tried to hold him, to get a breather or whatever, to tie him up, Gvozdyk would push him away. And it almost seemed like Gary Rosado was, basically penalizing, at least verbally, Beterbiev for doing that. He didn't once warn Gvozdyk for holding. What was your thoughts on the job that Rosado did?
I thought it was poor. But on the other hand, I think any referee can make a bad call. So he made that bad call in the first round. Then they went and they reversed it. So I think that maybe Gary Rosado kind of felt under a little pressure himself that he didn't want to make another blown call. There was that one time, I forget what round it was, might have been around the 7th or 8th. Remember when Gvozdyk kind of went down from that punch, and it seemed like he should have been counted down, and Gary Rosado called it a slip.
Yeah. That
it wasn't a hard knockdown, you know what I mean? But it was, it was a knockdown. And when they showed on the replay, BF did land a punch.
I did like the way they reversed that quickly. I was also a little surprised that Teddy Atlas didn't get warned for going right up to the referee. I don't know how legal that is. I know as a corner guy, you're allowed to stay in your corner, but to leave your corner and walk across the ring, I don't know. But Greg Serb is the commissioner of Pennsylvania. He's been a commissioner for a long, long time. Even when I was promoting, he was still involved. He's a kind of a guy that loves to take control, and I give him credit for making such a quick decision and correcting it, because I would like all commissions to do that. What's your thoughts?
I loved what they did because it truly was unfair. Not, it would have been unfair to any fighter, and it might have actually taken Gvozdyk out of his game a little bit early, because if you remember, I think it was like maybe the third round where Teddy Atlas was telling Gvozdyk in the corner, listen, they reversed the knockdown. I don't know if Teddy thought that was in Gvozdyk's head or not, but as far as that call being reversed, I really liked it. I didn't. That's the first time, and I remember actually seeing a commission do that. The only problem I see with that bill, if it's in all commissions, is we know that certain states have commissions that really aren't qualified commissions, and when you get people over there that are doing that, they're not really knowing what they're doing, and we can see a blown call where it works out in the opposite way than what it did in in this fight early on. So I would think that maybe if they had somebody who was designated, the one person designated, if they should happen to need to go to that replay, that guy is the one who replays it and he makes the call. If that makes any sense.
Well, I think the word undisputable comes in. If you're watching the replay like Greg Serb was, and you see it clear, it's either yes or no. I mean, the referee, just like in other professional sports, you gotta have enough proof to overturn them. Otherwise, their judgment sticks, because it's been like that forever. So, I hear what you're saying. You got guys involved in the commissions that don't know a left hook from a fish hook, and you don't want to put a fight result in their hands. I understand, but
I just think that I think it's good for the sport, but I think it's something that needs to be introduced a little bit slow. And I think what really we need to see happen is have it implemented with all fouls.
What I didn't like was when the WBC stepped in and ordered something right away over the commission. That I think the commission, for most cases, should be the priority with all fights, whether it's a title fight or not. But anyway, big fight coming up in a couple of weeks. Canelo Alvarez is challenging Sergey Kovalev for his piece of the world light heavyweight championship. The co-main event is an interesting fight, Dax. It puts Ryan Garcia, who ironically was talking a lot of smack against Golden Boy, and then he got that boatload of cash, and next thing, they're family. We're family. Us and Golden Boy, we're family. But he's in a fight that he wanted, and I'm not so sure he should want this fight against Romeo Dono. Dono is nowhere near the same ranking as Ryan Garcia as far as the computers go. But when I look at his resume compared to Ryan Garcia's, this guy's been in tough. What's your thoughts on this fight? Who's going to win?
I don't know exactly why Ryan Garcia wants this fight so bad. I'm not really sure what the background between the two of them is. I must have missed that. But, Duno, he's definitely a handful. He's not a guy that you would go out there and say that that you would handpick and say that you will want. In terms of the level of competition, I don't know. I think Ryan Garcia's been in a little bit tougher, actually, honestly. He's been in with some more experienced guys than Duno has when you match him up, when you look at, their opponent list. Duno, he has had a lot of fights against, guys back over in the Philippines, which, at times can equate to what opponent resumes are like over in Thailand or in Mexico when you fight there. So, we really don't know exactly how good Duno is and exactly what Duno is capable of. The fights that we've seen him here in the United States, he's fought some good journeymen, some good or gatekeepers even, and Ryan Garcia. Really, the thing is he really tested, or has Ryan Garcia been carefully guided? That's That's the question on that. So I think this is a solid matchup, and I think that it's a fight that if Ryan Garcia should happen to win and win convincingly, then that's going to more or less legitimize him and put him into like that top 10 and validate him as a contender rather than just a prospect.
See, now I look at Dano as a guy, his 4 best wins, he knocked out Christian Gonzalez. Gonzalez was 16-0 at the time. He also beat Juan Pablo Sanchez, Gilberto Gonzalez, and Juan Antonio Rodriguez, all decent fighters. And, the only guy that Ryan Garcia beat that I give him credit for, I mean, you could give him, his last fight against Jose Lopez, but Jason Veliz was really the toughest opponent that he's faced, and he went the distance with him. The one thing about Ryan Garcia that I've always thought was, he's so tall, he's got so much, he's so young, blah, blah, blah. But, when I'm looking at these two fighters, he's got a 3-inch height advantage over Dano. That's an inch less than Kovalev has over Canelo. So I don't know, and Dano is a tough fighter. Yes, he has his one loss, but that was in Russia against Alexeyev. You weren't going to win that fight, and he lost a decision. I don't know. I think Ryan Garcia, you met him, you got to talk to him. He's very confident. He seems overconfident, and I would be very careful against Dano. I think that. The Filipino fighters, when you see these guys fighting each other in the Philippines, I look at that as similar to some of the, Russian and Ukrainian fighters fighting each other in their home countries. These are tough guys.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm not predicting or saying that Ryan Garcia is going to beat Duno. I'm just saying that Ryan Garcia and Duno's resume isn't that spread apart in terms of quality. Ryan Garcia, I do agree that he's maybe he's a little bit full of himself. I don't know. That happens to be what a lot of people's opinion is. On the other hand, I don't know if Ryan Garcia, for some reason, feels that he's not being given the push that he should. He's in a stable, when a guy is young like Ryan Garcia and you're in a stable full of such, big names and superstars, he's only 20 years old. You're in there, you got Canelo, you got Virgil Ortiz Jr., and, you want to be up there and you want your name mentioned alongside of theirs all the time. So this, you have to credit Ryan Garcia for wanting such a tough fight. What we need to look out, Bill, like we have to for all these young fighters when they're in a fight like this, if they should happen to lose, is how Ryan Garcia would bounce back. A young guy who isn't ready for something like this, and we've seen this happen throughout history many times, they have a loss when they're so high on themselves. All of a sudden, they're mentally, they're just ruined. They're just never the same fighter again, and their career just more or less just flutters.
That's why they got to stop listening to voices in their ears telling them how great they are, and I think, listen, we saw that Ryan Garcia was surrounded by family. He was loving the limelight, and he clearly was cocky. But we'll see. This is really his first big test, and we'll see how he performs. And speaking of performance, Sergey Kovalev will be taking on Canelo Alvarez. I'm looking at this fight, and I go back and forth all the time. Sal said earlier that he thinks Canelo is going to end this fight. He doesn't think it's going to get into the 7th round. I'm stuck on one thing. I look at Sergey Kovalev with a 4-inch height advantage, a 2-inch reach advantage, and a guy that most people don't give him credit for his boxing ability. They think of him as a power puncher. Everybody knows that his weakness is the body shot, so naturally it was easy, and myself included, to think, Canelo's going to come in, work the body, and finish Kovalev off. However, if Kovalev can box this guy, if Kovalev can stay on his toes and move around, which we've seen him do, and as long as he's in shape, I think it's going to be a long night for Canelo, because I don't see Canelo just charging in to try to get inside. I see Canelo being frustrated. How do you see this fight going?
You said something that more or less has been going on with everybody. It's Canelo's going to win. No, Kovalev's too big. No, wait, Canelo's going to knock him out. He's going to stop him to the body. I don't know why Kovalev is being written off so easily. I don't know if it was the second Andre Ward fight in the fashion that he lost, the fact that he was knocked out by Lydia Alvarez with one punch, more or less, when Kovalev was actually winning that fight. And, if this was 5 years ago, even 3 years ago, let's say, the idea of Canelo beating Kovalev would have been laughed at by fans. I think Kovalev, he's being it's really overlooked. I don't know, maybe because he's 36. I have no idea why Kovalev just isn't getting his respect. He's a great boxer. He showed that in the Bernard Hopkins fight. At that time, I don't want to hear from anybody how Bernard was an old man. Bernard at that time was universally considered one of the top 3 fighters pound for pound. He was outboxing Canelo Alvarez. Kovalev is a good boxer, as you stated. The thing is here, can Canelo get in there close?
Right.
Kovalev with the fight against Yard, he looked a little bit slow, but Anthony Yard is a big, strong, light heavyweight. Canelo is not a big, strong, light heavyweight. So Canelo needs to stay in close. It's easier said than done. I think Buddy McGirt, a smart trainer, is going to have a solid game plan going in. So I don't expect Canelo to go in there and knock out Sergey Kovalev early like a lot of people are predicting. I think it's going to be a good fight. I do believe that if Canelo gets hurt, Kovalev is going to go after him and stop him. I think there's a little bit more than money on the line here. I think there's going to be a lot of pride on the line here since Sergey Kovalev is actually being looked at as an opponent. I'm not really overly excited for this fight, to be honest with you.
76% knockout ratio for Sergey Kovalev. I mean, as a light heavyweight, he's fought in the light heavyweight division. Canelo has demonstrated that he does not take the same power with him as he moves up in weight. When I look at Kovalev, I do see the best Kovalev between 2013 and 2016. I mean, just look at the names he beat during that time. Gabriel Campillo, Cornelius White, Nathan Cleverly, Cedric Agnew, B-Hop, like you mentioned, Jean-Pascal twice, Isaac Cholimba, all top fighters during that time in the light heavyweight division. Then he had a couple of questionable fights against Andre Ward. He did have some weaker fights until he stepped in with Alvarez. He lost by knockout last year, came back and won the fight. And then that Anthony Yard fight was a tough fight. You're right. Anthony Yard is a strong guy, young fighter. Maybe stepped in the ring with Kovalev a little too soon for his part. But Kovalev is not a slouch fighter, and neither is Canelo. I mean, we all have to admit Canelo has fought the toughest opposition his only loss coming at the hands of Floyd Mayweather, and he's beat some tough guys.
Yeah, absolutely. As far as Yard goes, I think you hit it right on the head. It might have been a little too early for Yard, but Kovalev, because Yard is younger and so much stronger, he boxed in that fight. He had the box, and that's what got him the win. Even the two guys that you had mentioned, the little lesser opponents, as you put it, after Andre Ward, Shabransky and McAllen, they're not bad fighters. A lot of guys coming off of knocked out back-to-back losses would not have fought two guys like that. So, Kovalev, I don't know. Let me ask you, what I've seen in Kovalev over those years is Kovalev's head was more or less built up into this indestructible monster. After the first Andre Ward fight, a lot of people disputed that decision. Even a majority of people say, Kovalev should have won that fight. And then he gets stopped by Andre Ward. I don't know if that might have really just done something to his mental psyche, and then, he's just not the same sense, because Kovalev, he's never really taken a lot of punishment in the ring, so I don't really see anything where, he turned old overnight at 36 years old. He's not really a 36-year-old fighter who's had a lot of abuse inside there. Do you think that at any point in time has played on him?
I do, and I'll tell you what.
And then, just as he's getting back into the win column, he gets knocked out by Alvarez.
Right. I think what happened with Kovalev, his nickname, the Crusher, he was regarded as a power puncher. People forgot about his boxing ability. And for all intent and purposes, Kovalev was a bully. And similar to other bullies in boxing, my man Sonny Liston and even Mike Tyson to a degree. Once they suffer that first loss, it changes them. And only the best ones can come back from the mental change that has taken place, that invincibility feeling, and all of a sudden, hey, I'm beatable, and make it worse, if they lose to a lesser fighter or somebody that didn't give that fighter a chance against them, So, of course, I think the best move he could have done, although I'm always one of these guys that criticize fighters for changing trainers like they changed their socks, I think one of the smartest moves he made at this stage of his career is get Buddy McGirt. Buddy McGirt, I saw an interview. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I saw an interview with Buddy McGirt recently about this fight. And, he's got this sense of calmness. I've only seen it a couple of times with certain people. And the one time that it sticks out in my head till the day I die is Evander Holyfield's look on his face when he was walking down to fight Mike Tyson. No one gave Holyfield a chance, including myself. And he had this sense of confidence, the look of confidence on his face. That's what I saw in Buddy McGirt as a trainer now, and now he's not the fighter. And you mentioned it earlier. You said, I think that Buddy McGirt's going to devise a good game plan. I think he has. And I think that Kovalev has bought into Buddy McGirt and will finally listen. I think one of his problems was exactly what you said. He was built up as this crusher, this guy who destroys his opponents, and he started not listening to his trainers. John David Jackson is a great trainer. He lost Kovalev. He lost him. Kovalev wasn't listening. Blamed his loss on John David Jackson. I think that the match with him and Buddy McGirt is a good one. I think Canelo's in for the fight of his life.
I think it's a great one too. Just back to that the Kovalev with the crusher thing. When everybody around you, your promoter, your trainer, everybody in your camp has you built up like that. The fans have you built up like that. You start believing that yourself. And then during the fights, you are expected to go out there and do that continuously. And any time that you don't perform like that, for example, when the Chilemba fight, how much backlash he got for the Chilemba fight after stopping John Pascal. And so now all of a sudden, maybe, in the corner, you're just not feeling that dynamic with your trainer anymore because you have those losses. And you're saying to yourself, okay, how come this guy isn't doing anything to help revise or really helping me during the fight here? And now I have this extra pressure of I have to go out there and do this on my own because my trainer is just here expecting me to go out there and blow these guys out. Buddy McGirt, like you stated, is a calm guy. Buddy was like that as a fighter, so maybe Kovalev more or less is feeling a little bit more confident with Buddy McGirt in his corner, stating to himself, okay, I got a guy here who's going to tell me all the right things during the fight, and whatever he says, if I just go out there and I do it, I'm going to come out victorious. More or less he's not feeling like he's alone in that corner anymore.
The one thing that I noticed about Buddy McGirt as a trainer is that, he'll tell his fighters, and his fighters know. You know how sometimes a fighter will say, hey, if you better show me something, otherwise I'm going to stop this fight. The difference with Buddy McGirt is he does. He stops the fights, and there's other trainers that will keep saying that throughout a fight, and meanwhile their fighter's getting pummeled. Buddy McGirt's not like that. Buddy McGirt really cares about his fighters. He doesn't care about win or loss. He cares about his fighter. He wants to win. But if his fighter's in danger, he'll stop the fight. And we saw that. We saw that against Yard. Because, Kovalev was in trouble. Kovalev looked like he wasn't going to make it another round. And Buddy McGirt said to him, I'm going to stop this fight. And Kovalev said, no, give me one more round. And came out a different fighter. Talk about mental motivation.
It is mental motivation. And sometimes when a trainer says that to a fighter, take a guy like Kovalev in a situation as we were just describing, that more or less is having that guy think to himself, wow, am I really losing that bad? Am I getting beat up that bad? I've tried everything I can. There's nothing I can do, rather than getting the advice that they want to hear. Now, Buddy McGirt, he's always been honest. He stopped fights. We've seen him do that with a lot of his fighters. He cares about his fighters, but he gives direction during the fight. So I just think, as you stated, it's exactly what Kovalev needs at this point in time in his career. He knows he's going to get the right directions, and he knows he's going to get a guy in there who's going to tell him exactly what he needs to do, or he's going to stop that fight if he needs to stop that fight.
100% agree. Dax, great job, and I will look forward to you next time. Keep up the good work on the website, brother.
Absolutely. But just going back to the Beterbiev and Gvozdyk fight, that is the third IBF and WBC unification fight this year.
Listen, we got to have unification fights, but
I'm saying
but look who's doing it though. That's the sad part. We got these Ukrainians and Russians. Fighters from outside the United States are willing to fight anybody. It seems like the U.S. fighters are not. Look at Jamel Charlo. Jermell Charlo, no disrespect to Dennis Hogan, but that's his fighter. This is a guy that says he's the best in the world. I have the belt everybody wants. You got to come and see me. That's what he says. And he comes up with Dennis Hogan? Come on. It's a joke that these other fighters like Gvozdyk and Beterbiev fighting each other, okay, which everybody knew was a risk and a challenge for both men. And you know what? Joe Tessitore said it last night, Dax. Both fighters win in this situation. Gvozdyk is going to have more fans than he started with because he showed that he's talented, he's got guts, he's got a heart. He's going to be back. He'll be a champion again someday.
Right. My point was, I wonder if maybe these people are starting to wake up with the World Boxing Super Series and the success that they're having with the continuous unification bouts during this series, and they're seeing the reaction from the fans, and now there's pressure on there to say, you know what, we have to do this too. As for Charlo, real quick, we have to give him some credit because word is that he's actually paying for Patrick Day's funeral.
Well, I give that is good news. I'm glad to hear that. I didn't know that.
No, credit has to be given where credit is deserved.
I'm not going to deny it. You're 100% right. 100% right. But and just to comment on the World Boxing Super Series, you're right. The World Boxing Super Series should get credit because they are forcing most of these guys, again, non-American fighters, are putting their titles on the line to fight in a tournament. When was the last time the American champion does that? It's too risky. That's my point, Dax. That's my point. And Andre Ward is saying, they don't want to risk their legacy. Legacy? How do you create a legacy if you don't fight the fights? It's ridiculous.
In this era, legacies are created online. Understand, we have 2 YouTubers that literally sold out an arena.
Yeah, but that's. I hear you. It's just sad. Dax, we got to take a break, man. Great job. Keep up the good work, brother.
All right, enjoy your day.
That's Dax Khan. Check him out up on the website. I got to take a break. When we come back, we're scheduled to have Alex Forpally join us. Don't go nowhere.
Billy C will be right back.
Listen to this important message. If you owe money to the IRS, you will want to hear this. Penalties and interest compound daily on your back taxes, putting you under unnecessary forms, and if you qualify, you may end up saving thousands of dollars. Call Tax 10,000 at 800-773-4604.
Need relief from backaches and stiffness in your hips or down your legs? Then you need Dr. Ho's Back Relief Belt. The innovative technology works to support and decompress your spine. And now it's covered by Medicare.
Every patient with back pain should be wearing this belt.
Nothing gave me instant relief except for the Dr. Ho belt.
Feel good while standing, walking, driving, doing housework, and while laying down. And now Dr. Ho's patented belt is available at our best price ever. It's even covered by Medicare. Order now and get the easy-to-use hand pump and back rehabilitation DVD free.
Similar belts can cost you almost $1,000, but my belts won't cost you $500, not $300, not even $200. I will give you my special TV price.
And remember, Dr. Ho's belt is covered by Medicare.
If you know a friend or family member that suffers with pain, get them my system today. Help them live with less pain, be more active, and get back to doing the things they love. Give them the gift of health.
Need relief?
Broken air conditioning, $4,400. Failing refrigerator, $2,500. Don't let outrageous repair and replacement bills like these bust your budget. Get the First American Home Warranty Plan. And when a covered appliance or system breaks, we'll repair it or replace it for you.
We had a high-end dishwasher go kaput. They put it in a brand new dishwasher.
We have plans that cover air conditioning, most appliances, plus heating, plumbing, electrical systems, and much more. Plans start as low as $25 a month. Why let a major appliance or system breakdown bust your budget or go through the hassle of finding trustworthy service? Last year alone.
KO Fantasy Boxing is boxing's only trademarked fantasy game. Check it out, www.kofantasyboxing.com. Select your own gym, your own fighters, track them through a season that can last from 3 months to a year, depending upon which league you join. You got to check this out, man. www.kofantasyboxing.com.
The only Don King.
Makes me feel good, Billy, to have you, the #1 show in the country, talking boxing with Billy. So I invite each and every American that's listening to this great show to tune in, because we want you to be there with Billy and me.
Now back to Talking Boxing with Billy C., the only radio host man enough to take a punch from Mike Tyson.
Wait a minute, man. Hold on there. Jeremy, man, I need you to take this one, all right?
Wait, what? No way. I can't do this.
Need I remind you I'm Billy C., damn it? Now put on that mustache and get in there.
Hey, look at me. I'm Billy C. Crap.
The undisputed heavyweight champion of Boxing Talk Radio. It's Talking Boxing with Billy C. Now back to Billy C. Interact with the show at BillyCBoxing.com.
And we're back. You're watching and listening to the Billy C. Show. And don't forget to check us out next week or week after, I guess, for our pre-fight discussion on the Canelo Kovalev fight. For all intent purposes, we might even be in Las Vegas. We'll see. But joining us right now is my man, Alex Forpally. Good morning, Alex.
Good morning, Billy C. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing well. I didn't know if you were hanging out with Bugs Bunny or not with all of those carrots you have there. But anyway, great fight the other night. Artur Beterbiev knocks out Alexander Gvozdyk. What was your thoughts on that fight?
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a good fight. We're being treated to a really good year, despite a lot of tragedy that we've seen. That does, come along with our sport. It's just like car accidents are a part of traveling by road. Fatalities are, unfortunately, I've been watching this sport religiously for 35 years now, and unfortunately, I've seen boxers die, and we will see more boxers die. It will happen again, sadly. But it is the nature of the sport. Getting hit in the head is dangerous. But this week we were treated to a really good fight. And I do think I've been listening to the show, and I disagree with you guys. Just on the scoring sense, I did think Gvozdyk I was not scoring it round by round, but I was not surprised to think that Gvozdyk was ahead, considering they did reverse the knockdown call. But I thought that it was one of those fights where you could tell all Beterbiev needed was in order to land a couple of times. That's one of those things. I tend to like the skill guy in a lot of fights. And what I think Gvozdyk was doing was the clean, effective punching. Even though maybe it wasn't the harder punching, and Beterbiev was landing a few hard punches around, a lot of illegal punches. But it was one of those things, when you have power like that, when you have skills, you got to be right all night. But when you've got power, you only got to be right once. And he was being right just enough a couple of times each round to be breaking Gvozdyk down. And I think that's what we saw. And it was a good stoppage, especially considering what's happened recently. Because sometimes you see referees are gun shy and stop fights too quickly. But that didn't happen. I think it was an appropriate stoppage. Even though, Beterbiev never had a moment where he had Gvozdyk in real trouble, where he was just hammering him. Because I did think that Gvozdyk was the guy who was a little more skilled and was a little more controlled, was able to get Beterbiev to fight where he wanted. The thing was, so many of Beterbiev's punches just hit so hard. Even when they were grazing shots, they were doing damage. And, eventually that just became too much.
There's no question that Gvozdyk was the more skilled fighter boxing-wise. But I disagree with you. Gvozdyk was moving around. And to suggest that Beterbiev wasn't landing punches, well, then the breakdown process wouldn't have happened if he was just grazing him. And as far as illegal punches, what I kept seeing was Gvozdyk trying to hold on for dear life, trying to tie up Beterbiev. and Beterbiev didn't want him to hold, so he was immediately trying to break free. Now sometimes his punches did have a tendency to hit. Maybe when Rosado was telling him to break up, or maybe a little behind the head and that kind of stuff. But, when a fighter's holding you, I don't think enough referees prevent the holder. And not once did Rosado warn Gvozdyk for excessive holding, and he was being worn down, broken down. And I think that Teddy Atlas, his reactions in the corner, Alex, was really telling, because although I agree that Gvozdyk was the experienced fighter in terms of boxing, was moving around using his footwork, his jab, he wasn't delivering his jab from the right distance. He wasn't able to keep moving. Beterbiev was successful in cutting the ring off. I just think that what we saw was two different styles, a boxer against a puncher, and in this case, the puncher had enough skill to make sure that he wasn't chasing him around, that he was able to cut the ring off, and he wore down Gvozdyk. That's the way that fight ended. And you're right, it wasn't a brutal knockout, but Gvozdyk wasn't going to make it to the final bell. He didn't have the energy or the movement anymore because of those body shots. Those body shots were hurting Gvozdyk.
Yes, and I do think that. I don't mean to say that Beterbiev wasn't landing punches. He certainly was. He just wasn't landing like multiple shots in a row, combinations. He would land one big shot and then a bunch of cuffing shots, chopping shots, and that's where some of them look. And you're right. They weren't blatantly illegal, but I think this has been something throughout his career. He does throw a lot of shots that are more, on the side of the head, the side of the ear, just behind the ear. Some guys, that's their style. They have sort of that winging style. These guys had a history too, and I think that maybe that's what you saw in Teddy Atlas, is that he knew Beterbiev had stopped him in the amateurs. Well, the pros are going to favor him even more because now he's got more time to wear you down, and Gvozdyk has more time to keep boxing and keep sticking to his style. And you're right, that was another thing that was definitely an issue with the fight. And I thought this was good for the referee, Gabe Rosado, because I like when the fighters are allowed to find the distance on their own. And I think Rosado let them sort of work that out. It was rough on Gvozdyk because I think that Beterbiev did land a lot of sort of chopping shots that were a little questionable. But you're right. I mean, too much intervention from a referee would then be unfair because then he's not letting the other guy fight his fight.
But he didn't. But I think that Beterbiev was making it so he didn't have to intervene by breaking free and forcing Gvozdyk to fight. I don't like when referees let them hold. They let him hold for a few seconds and then they say, "Hey, let go." Stop holding or whatever. Gary Rosado didn't have to do that, but to me, it seemed like Gvozdyk was his favorite, and it seemed to me that the judges were leaning towards Gvozdyk no matter what, and Beterbiev had to knock him out, and he did.
Well, I think that's where we disagree slightly, because if you remember, if I could quote the late Harold Letterman, what he always used to say was he would break down for HBO the categories of judging: clean punching, effective aggressiveness, ring generalship, and defense. But then he would reiterate with a strong emphasis on clean, effective punching. So if those judges had that same thing in mind, even though it was Beterbiev doing more damage when he landed, I thought, and I didn't look at the punch stat, but I thought it was Gvozdyk, at least up until maybe the last two rounds, who did seem to be landing the more scoring punches. But again, it was a close competitive fight, and when you're up close, maybe it's a different thing. I do agree with you, and Greg Serb even mentioned it, that what Teddy Atlas did at the end of the first round was inappropriate.
It was. I don't even think that. Listen, I know for a fact that your corner is not supposed to leave that immediate area. And
Right.
and he's lucky that fight didn't get stopped right then. Right then,
when Bernardo Osuna spoke to
No. It's Bernardo Osuna.
And Bernardo Osuna, when he spoke to Greg Serb in between rounds, he mentioned that Serb was not too happy about that. But I don't know if anything happened, and maybe Serb did have words with him afterwards. But that's the thing. What you get when Teddy Atlas, I don't know. That's the thing that's a little annoying with him. He's very much aware, or at least it seems, he's very much aware the cameras are on him. And I don't know. ESPN encourages that. I would hate to think that had something to do with the judging. I don't think so, because I thought the fight was close enough that you could have seen Gvozdyk ahead. But I don't know. It was definitely inappropriate that he charged across the ring.
As a judge, when you're watching a fight and you're up as close as you are, and you see the look on one fighter's face, like, oh no, here comes another shot. Oh, I gotta move. I gotta do that. That has to help you when you're scoring close rounds, and that was the look that Gvozdyk had for most of the fight.
That's a very good point.
You know, I mean, he would go back, and even he did not look comfortable in the ring. He did not look comfortable in the corner. The fight, it started slipping away from him. It had nothing to do with that first knockdown, because as a matter of fact, to me, it looked like he got a little mad at that when he thought they ruled it as a knockdown. But then from the fourth round on, I thought Beterbiev took over the fight. From the fourth round on, I saw Gvozdyk just withering away, despite him being the better boxer. One last question on the fight. I've been talking about it all day. What's your thoughts on how Timothy Bradley and Dre, Dre, he used to be on Dre, but now he's just Dre, how they both were giving kudos to both these fighters for fighting each other and taking a risk? And it wasn't that I disagree with that, but the part that bothered me was that they said, because most fighters today go, when they create the way, their choice of verbiage, they were like, well, when they create their legacy, they care about making money. And so most don't take risks. So I'm saying to myself, that seems like an oxymoron. How do you not take a risk, but at the same time create a legacy? I mean, these guys, both their values, and we've seen this happen, Alex, where both fighters, they give us a good fight, and both fighters' value goes up, even the loser. That's the way boxing used to be. That's why losses didn't matter as much as they mean today. What's your thoughts on the fan accepting, a fighter, basically accepting a fighter for taking an easy path to a title? That's what I'm saying. That's why I'm a little surprised you don't kind of agree with those guys, because I agree that they took a risk. What I don't like is the fact that the fan accepts it. That the fan accepts the easy road. That's my point.
Right, and I thought that's what Tim Bradley and Dre were getting at, was that I took it as they were sort of, without coming out and saying it, they were pointing out the sort of Mayweather factor, that the way you create a legacy without taking risk is social media. That's how you do it. And you convince people that you did take a risk when you didn't. Or you took minimal risks. And I think that's what you see with Tim Bradley and Andre Ward's career. Both those guys took risks. And I think the point they were making is, so early in this career, both these guys had less than 20 fights.
But they had 9,000 amateur fights.
Exactly. And I think maybe that's why I think they were willing to do it. They had a history with each other. And I think that maybe I don't know. I mean, this, of course, is anecdotal, but I think that in my experience of just watching this sport, to me, the guys who retire with more faculties are the guys that have a brief the briefer your career is, and maybe the more intense it was, the shorter it lasted, the better you end up with your faculties. That tends to make sense.
The better, but you could also say the better defensive fighters end up with more faculties as well.
Absolutely. But I mean, I think it kind of stands to reason a guy who retires with 22 fights is going to be in better shape than a guy who retires with 65 fights. But all things being equal, and of course, I guess that's the thing about this is we know they're not, is that there's so much you can't quantify with head trauma. But anyway, because I think if you, at least to me, one of the things about the Patrick Day knockout is the way his head hit the canvas was just a horrible, horrible thing. It's not just the head punches, but when you have a concussed body falling back to the ring, they can't protect, the way the neck snaps back and forth and bounces the head around on the canvas. And that is where I think a lot of damage occurs. But anyway, I digress. I did enjoy the Beterbiev fight, and I do think he's one of the most dangerous. I think he's much more dangerous than Bivol because he's the kind of guy that if you're a skill guy, which Bivol is, you've got to be right against him all night. Beterbiev doesn't need to be right but once.
But the difference, first of all, I think Bivol's in the wrong weight class. He should be a super middleweight. But I think Bivol possesses enough power to knock out Beterbiev. I think Beterbiev, his weakness is his chin. And I know that sounds crazy, but Gvozdyk hurt him. When Gvozdyk landed flush, and he only landed flush like solid hard punches a couple of times in that fight. And the one time he buckled Beterbiev's legs. I mean, if he followed up with a couple of more shots, maybe we end up with a different result. I don't know. But I think Bivol could hurt Beterbiev because of his skill and the fact that he's got punching power. But Beterbiev's a monster. He's a scary dude, man. He's a scary looking guy. He's strong. He fights the way he looks. He looks like he could, fight. Like if you look at him and try to guess the style, chances are you would guess exactly how he fights.
Oh, absolutely. He's chiseled. He's like the consummate mesomorph build. He looks like, the archetype for action figures, little boy action figures.
Yeah.
Because his body is, perfectly designed for, putting guns and weapons on him and armor and stuff.
So we got a big fight coming up in a couple of weeks. Canelo Alvarez is attempting to be the fourth Mexican fighter to obtain 4 different world titles in different weight classes. He's taken on WBO light heavyweight champion and computer rankings #1 light heavyweight in Sergey Kovalev. Will be on DAZN. So for anybody out there that doesn't have it, it's that just to subscribe for the $20 a month this fight is worth it. But Alex, I've flip-flopped on this fight, and it's easy for me to think that Saul Canelo Alvarez is going to win this fight. And as a matter of fact, I don't think Kovalev can win this fight unless he knocks out Alvarez, because I think that all the powers that be, because of the drawing power of Alvarez, it's going to be hard to get a W against him without a knockout. But I think Buddy McGirt is an important figure in this fight. And I think that Kovalev's height and reach advantage is going to really be the difference in this fight. And, of course, his conditioning. Remember, Kovalev has fought recently, so theoretically he should be in decent shape for this fight. How do you see it going?
I'm really looking forward to it. I think that my quick take is Canelo by stoppage. However, I agree with you. I do think that the Buddy McGirt factor is definitely a major plus for Kovalev, especially because, up until the Yard fight, I would have said that Kovalev's best fights were the Hopkins win, the first Ward fight, and the rematch with Eleider Alvarez, because those were, even though he had plenty of other fights where he showed the true crusher, Those were the fights where he dealt with opponents that gave him more complications. They were strategic, tactician-type opponents, and he did well. And I think the Yard fight, of course, he showed that he could come back from near defeat, which he hadn't really showed before. Usually, if you got him in trouble, you stopped him. At least Ward had and Alvarez had in the first fight. So I think that the thing about, and this was something that Sal was pointing out, a guy like Kovalev, he does seem, or at least to me, seems like he always did well on that bully mentality. Some fighters are just kind of like that. Once they see that they're vulnerable, sometimes they're kind of like Humpty Dumpty. It's hard to put them back together again. He's shown that, Buddy McGirt has been able to put him back together to some extent. However, I do think that, like Sal was pointing out, there is sort of a muscle memory to losses, and Canelo is the kind of guy, especially that sort of grinding, counter-punching, thinking, brutal body puncher, in very similar way that Ward was, that he's going to sort of bring up the PTSD of that loss, and those tracks, that track to defeat, will be there in Kovalev's mind, and I don't think it's a matter. It's a big matter to get him onto that track, as Sal was pointing out, and get him to cave in, just because of the pressure of the situation and the type of attack that Canelo is going to bring. I think it is really, really smart marketing. Fight making by matchmaking by Golden Boy, which we've seen throughout Canelo's career.
Well, Dax made a great point about the bully mentality and Kovalev's nickname, the Crusher. And, he, like I mentioned earlier, between 2013 and 2016, that was Kovalev's heyday, with wins over Campilio and Cornelius White and Cleverly and Cedric Agnew and B-Hop and Jean Pascal and Isaac Chilimba. I mean, these are all the top light heavyweights. And the way he was going through the division, he started believing his own press clippings. He stopped listening to his corner. When he ran into trouble with Ward, the first thing he does is blames his corner. I think mentally he broke down. He came back. He hasn't fought the tougher opposition until he fought Alvarez. And then he brings Buddy McGirt in the corner. The Anthony Yard fight was a tough fight for him. There's no question about it. And I do believe that Buddy McGirt knows exactly what Canelo is going to try to do. Canelo, like you mentioned, the matchmaking between for Golden Boy to make this fight, I think that they're all banking on what you're saying, that Canelo's going to be able to get in and wake up that uncomfortable feeling that Kovalev's going to have by being getting knocked out to the body from Andre Ward, etc. I think that Buddy McGirt is smart enough to prepare for that, both physically and mentally, for Kovalev. And if he's not, then he's here for a payday. That's it. And you can't blame him for that either. I mean, if he's clearly diminishing his skills, if his skills are diminishing, this is a great opportunity for him. But it's also a great opportunity for him to show that he's not done. He does have a 4-inch height advantage and a 2-inch reach advantage, and the guy can box, Alex, and that's going to be the telltale of this fight. If he can keep Canelo at bay and force Canelo to try to look for those openings to get in, round after round will go by. And providing that Kovalev is in shape, he could steal the fight. Unfortunately, I don't think he can win the fight unless he knocks out Canelo, even if he wins every round.
Yeah, I think that of course comes into one of the factors that you got to wonder about, just because of the the financial power of a Canelo Alvarez fight. In that Las Vegas real estate, that him winning and continuing to win is important. But I'd hate to suggest that has any impact on a fight, though, Billy C.
No, it's hearsay.
Yeah. But I do think that you're right. I think that's what makes this a fun matchup is that Kovalev is definitely. I think he's a little bit of damaged goods, and that's what Golden Boy is hoping. But I think he's definitely a live dog. I think he has the perfect corner in Buddy McGirt. The brain trust that he has access to is really an advantage for what he has to do. Because you're absolutely right. McGirt's the kind of guy he's not going to be afraid to tell him what to beware of. You know what I mean? Yep. And I do think that's he's already shown that he has been able to rebound on when it mattered in the Yard fight. Now, granted, I think Canelo has more tools at his disposal than Anthony Yard. But of course, Yard's a legit light heavyweight, so the physicality, that's going to be a factor. It's going to be an interesting fight. I'm looking forward to it, and I think if Canelo does stop Sergey Kovalev, he makes a very strong case for himself as number one fighter on earth, pound for pound.
No question about that. But so as of today, what's your official prediction in the fight?
I'm going to say Canelo by stoppage in 9 or under.
9 or under?
Yeah.
You're going to take the under 9?
Under 9.
His knockout, ratio. The fight I look at. I look at Julio Cesar Chavez, who Canelo fought in 2017, and Chavez has a granite chin, and the fight was at like 165, I think it was, and he couldn't knock out Chavez Jr. and he pummeled Chavez all night. I just don't think he possesses the power. I think his shot at stopping Kovalev is the body shot, is the body work, is to get in close. I just can't see Kovalev being that stupid to let him in. If Canelo can get inside and work the body on Kovalev, then Kovalev's not doing his job. Kovalev has to use his height and reach advantage. End of story. Like I said, it may not help him to win this fight, but he certainly could potentially land a shot that could send this fight into a different direction. That's for sure.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing about it is that Kovalev is definitely the kind of guy that if he lands clean, he can definitely do some damage to Canelo. So it's going to be a dangerous fight for as long as
76.3% knockout ratio for Kovalev, all at light heavyweight. Sal Canelo Alvarez, 63.6%, and that goes from mostly junior middleweight. So important stats to look at. But
hey, Billy C, one thing I did want to mention, since it is October and this is one of my favorite months because of Halloween, and I've been mentioning these grisly cuts. Did you get a look at the arterial pumping blood in the cut of Louis Collazo in one of those ESPN shots when he was wincing at the pain? I was like, wow.
Yeah. I saw that, but
Tyson Fury had nothing on that.
Yeah, but how about Lady Gaga's cut? Did you see that?
No.
Some fan picked her up and then stumbled, and they both fell off the stage during a live act. And I saw some photos of Lady Gaga's got a boxer's cut right by her eye. Man, it looks like she was in there with Mike Tyson. It's a shame, but anyway, yeah, we've seen some horrific cuts over the last several weeks, that's for sure. But Alex, I appreciate your time, and we look forward to next time, my man.
All right, Billy C, take care.
All right, that's Alex that we saw the other night, Artur Beterbiev beating Gvozdyk in what I thought was a thriller for sure. But in any event, joining us right now, we'll get her thoughts on the same fight. Is boxing's best photographer, the beautiful Emily Harney. Good morning, Emily.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm great.
What's your thoughts on the fight from Friday night? Artur Beterbiev stopping Gvozdyk. How'd you see it?
I actually had Gvozdyk ahead, and I didn't really see that coming. I mean, they were both ripping each other, so it's not surprising that at some point one of their bodies were going to kind of give out. But this is what you want to see at this level. Two guys that really are top level fighters going at it, and I think Gvozdyk came in as the guy that people were kind of questioning in some cases, but you can't really go on what the past is. As soon as two guys get in front of each other, the fight that they make is going to be what the story is. And I think these two guys gave not only the fans a great fight, but each other a great fight. I think it sets both of them up for good positioning, but I do think Beterbiev needs to look at what this fight was for him, why the judges, saw it in the other way. It was close, in which the judges saw it. One judge certainly saw it for Beterbiev. So you wonder, what did he see that these two other judges and that a lot of us weren't seeing, to say, yeah, he's got the fight, if it had gone to the scorecards, and I don't think by any means did he get lucky, because I think he would have been in good position either way, but both of these guys, the expectation is that they were coming to fight, and they gave us that.
It's funny. Alex was just on, and he felt the same way. He thought that Gvozdyk was winning. I had a couple of people in the chat room thinking that he was winning. I didn't. I thought that Beterbiev took over the fight after, the fourth round. I thought it was all him. The look on Gvozdyk's face looked like he was not, he was losing confidence as the minutes went down. Teddy Atlas didn't have confidence in him. So it was a great fight, and I think that because people have different opinions, it proves it. One thing you mentioned, their history as amateurs. How different is it in the pros when they said, Beterbiev won by stoppage because he bloodied Gvozdyk's nose. They stopped it because it was blood in the amateurs. And this fight was a little more than just a little blood. It was definitely a beatdown.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're always going to try to take something like that and make it into, bigger than what it is, because he beat him here, so it's, why not use that past of, if people don't really know the whole story, it sounds good, right?
Yeah, as long as they didn't say, well, he beat him in checkers once, so he's got the edge. But big fight coming up in a couple of weeks. Sergey Kovalev going up against Saul Canelo Alvarez. We are talking about that today. We won't be doing a show for a couple of weeks. We will be back to do the post-fight. We're hoping to be out there, actually, for the fight. But Kovalev against Alvarez, I keep flip-flopping because when it was first announced, and I think you and I had talked about this, I immediately said Canelo, Canelo, and now I'm starting to think, Buddy McGirt, I think, makes a big difference. I feel that, Kovalev he's got such a height advantage, and people forget that he's a good boxer. Really, the fight's in his hands. If he could be disciplined and box, I don't know if Saul Canelo Alvarez can get in without, just being reckless. What's your thoughts? How do you see it going?
Yeah, I just think Kovalev has the upper hand here. He's more comfortable in that weight class. He's more comfortable as a fighter in that weight class, and Canelo's coming up, so he's taking a risk coming up. Granted, you walk around bigger, but you don't necessarily fight guys that are bigger in that way, or who have sat at that level of fight contention for so long. So I think Kovalev certainly holds the upper hand there. Buddy McGirt certainly is going to give him everything he possibly can, and so that's now up to Kovalev to take that and ultimately listen and utilize that. And I think if he does utilize his reach and his length, he'll be in great shape. And I don't know how else Canelo gets in there unless he does go in there and get reckless or, fight in the pocket. But you fight in the pocket with somebody like Kovalev, he's got that reach around you and, able to come up inside you a lot better than other guys that you fought. So I think it's a much more dangerous fight than people are kind of giving it credit for. And maybe that's because of Kovalev's past, but again, you have to remember where he sat for so long as this weight class of a fighter and fighting the guys that he's fought. So he definitely has the control. It's just now, can he keep the focus and take advantage of that control? That's the big question. And I think that's a bigger question based on people who, really understand these two fighters as fighters and aren't just fans.
Kovalev had this persona. He was a bully. He was, the crusher, and he loses. And, that whole persona went with him. And I think, mentally he took a severe hit, and he did what a lot of fighters do right away. He blames the trainer. I always thought John David Jackson was a great trainer. He gets rid of him. And he ends up with Buddy McGirt. Buddy McGirt, I think, is one of the most underrated trainers in the sport of boxing. He gets a big win against Anthony Yard, who, for all intent purposes, Kovalev was in some trouble. Now he's in the biggest fight of his career. I mean, you can make that statement. It's pretty much the biggest fight of his career. I think Buddy McGirt is the equalizer. Do you believe that Kovalev will follow him? And if so, what kind of game plan can Buddy come up with to give Kovalev confidence that, he could either protect his body or withstand a body attack from Canelo? Because we all know that that's what Canelo's going to do.
Well, I think he can withstand the body shot from Canelo. I'm not really worried about that. And he has to get there, too. So that's a big thing, to be able to get there. If Kovalev can fight, outside of that pocket, then Canelo's never going to get there. But the only reason I think Kovalev wouldn't listen to McGirt is if his head is elsewhere. So that's the only time I only feel like I see Kovalev off, is when his head is elsewhere. And it's been few and far between, but we've seen it happen. And I think the switch in trainers, maybe it needed to happen because he felt John David wasn't seeing what maybe somebody else would. Some fighters don't see that necessarily, and they make the move more because it's an emotional move. And I don't know really how much of what it was, but when a fighter loses too, they have to take a look at what wasn't being done for me, and we don't necessarily know what wasn't being done for him or what he felt wasn't being done for him. But I think you're right in that Buddy McGirt is a very underrated trainer. He's really got what it takes, I think, to bring the best out of a fighter. So like I said, if Kovalev's head is somewhere else because of something else, I think that's where you find him in trouble. But otherwise, I think you listen to him. I think he did a good job at points listening to his other team. But again, we don't know what else that personal stuff is that goes on and that throws that fighter off.
Emily, what's your official prediction in that fight?
Oh, I take Kovalev.
Really?
I think it goes the distance with Kovalev, but I think we get a good fight. Canelo's not somebody that's going to back off, and I just don't see Canelo necessarily going down unless Kovalev's able to get off some really good shots and just Canelo finds himself in trouble. But I think he's too smart of a fighter for that. So
but
I think
but he's never been hit by a guy as strong as Kovalev ever.
He hasn't. No, you're right. Absolutely not. He hasn't. So we're going to see how that fares. But I think he's been hit more than maybe Kovalev might be able to get to him if he's smart and fights from the outside too. But only time will tell. I think we have a great fight on our hands either way.
Do you think Kovalev can win a decision in Las Vegas against Canelo?
I do if it's far enough apart. I think if Kovalev really dominates that ring from the distance and off that jab and off that length, then yes. But if he gets in there and mixes it up and there's anything hidden by one judge and the other judge on the other side, then yeah, we might have some controversy. But I think if Kovalev fights from the outside, he should be good. Make it clear. Make it clear so they can't miss anything.
Listen, it's always been my hang up. He always seems to get the close fights always go to him, and he does. Nobody's really beaten him so decisively. I mean, the closest one was Triple G, and even that you can make the argument. There were people that felt that he did not win either fight. I personally thought Triple G won both fights. Even the Daniel Jacobs fight was closer than you would have thought by the scorecards. So
right.
Kovalev would have to really dominate big time to win a decision. I think that he could win the fight, but he needs to stop Canelo, or at least put him down at least twice, to win a decision. But I hope you're right. Well, I got another question on the undercard. Ryan Garcia is stepping up, and he's taking on Deneau. And this is the fight that he's looking for. He wanted this fight. I think that Garcia, in my opinion, has only fought one tough fighter. Well, if you give him his last fight against Jose Lopez, I mean, that was tough too. He had a real hard time beating Carlos Morales. A lot of people thought he lost that fight. But Jason Veliz was the toughest opponent. He steps in with Deneau, who's a pretty tough guy. He's been in at least 4 fights where I think were against good opposition. How do you see this one going?
I think this is a big step in a interesting direction, and maybe a little too soon too. I love Ryan Garcia, and I love his heart and his passion, but sometimes I feel like maybe a fight like that needs to take place in a year, because I think you have like a build up to that too. Like there are certain fights that do need to be made, but I think there are the in-betweens that might have to be made before this gets made, because this is a tough fight for Garcia. And like you said, he's had some tough fights prior to this with guys that aren't as great as Donaire. And I think that if this fight goes against Garcia, it could hurt him more so. Even if it's a good fight for him, it's a close fight, I feel like it could hurt more heartfully than it could, in terms of just record-wise, So this is a tough test mentally, I think, for him. He's been through a lot in terms of, the hoopla of his contract and what have you. So I think he just needs to keep the focus. If he can keep the focus and keep the focus on what is important here and beating his opponent, then that's good. But if he doesn't and he loses that and he kind of gets caught up in maybe the ambiance of the matchup, we might have some problems there. He's a young fighter. I think this fight, would stand much better in a year.
That's what they say. Too bad youth is wasted on the young, and that's what Ryan Garcia is going through now. But hey, keep up the good work. One last thing, I want to give you a prediction, and I know you're going to laugh at me, but the Jets are going to upset New England on Monday night. You heard it here first. You heard it here first.
Listen, I'm not gonna disagree or agree with you on that, because here's the thing: the last couple games that they've talked about with these guys, these should be easy games, are not easy games. And I think, when you're a fighter, you start listening to the media, it should be an easy fight for you, and you start thinking that, you lose that edge. So I'm hoping these guys aren't listening to you all and myself right now. But I hope they don't lose to the Jets. But I'm not going to make any bets on that one.
I'm hoping the Jets turn it around. They had a lot of life behind Sam Darnold last week, and this week they get C.J. Mosley back. But Belichick and Brady, it's a tough combo to beat. So, but I'm telling you, you watch. The Jets are going to issue their first loss to the season to the Patriots. Jets win Monday night.
All right, well, that will be their only win of the season.
Well, it would be their second.
Right.
It would be their second. It would be their second win.
Second.
But
that's it, though.
But that's all I need. That's all I need. If the Jets can beat New England on Monday night, my season's done, man. I'm happy. I'm happy. But
the ribbon from you and Julie Letterman is going to be terrible.
Well, I'll be pulling for it. That's right. Does she still have season tickets?
She sure does.
Yeah.
She sure does.
I gave mine up. It was just miserable rides home, man. But anyway, Emily, keep up the good work. We'll talk to you next time.
Thanks, guys. Have a good week.
Take it easy. That's Emily Harney, boxing's best photographer, and she doesn't think my Jets are going to upset the Patriots, but I have a strange feeling they will. Okay, I got an email. This was from my man Joel. He says, hey, Billy C., last night there was a bare-knuckle fighting championship. It was a pay-per-view. I was wondering if you guys have watched it, and if so, what do you think? Truthfully, I have not watched them. I did watch the main event. I saw. I did not pay for it. I don't think it's worth it. I do like bare-knuckle boxing, Joel. Gabriel Gonzaga knocked out Bigfoot Silva. And just it looked like a club. It looked like a barbaric fight, which is bare knuckle boxing. I like it. I just don't like the fact that we got washed up UFC and boxers in it. I wish that we had, that it would solidify itself as a true option, whereas we could see some, younger fighters rather than, fighters that have seen better days. Although Nat, what do they call? I can never pronounce his last name, but Dappy Dat is his nickname. He was a successful fighter. As a matter of fact, has not fought in a few years, but was in that last night and won a 5-round bare knuckle fight against Travis Thompson on this card, and. Dappy Dat was a fighter I always liked as a boxer. But anyway, I would like to see better matchups, Joel. That's my issue. But Sergey Kovalev against Canelo Alvarez. Make sure you sign up for DAZN to get that fight. I think that it's going to be a good one. It will be streamed on DAZN. Remember, there's 18,000 fans. This fight will sell out. I think there's still tickets available. You can buy tickets by visiting our website, BillyCBoxing.com, and clicking on the fight poster, which you can't miss. We're working on getting out there, and we will be doing our pre-fight show through Press Row, so we'll keep you posted on that, or just look for us, because if we do make it out, it'll be all day Thursday, I think. I'll be doing an 8-hour show, and we'll have guests and everything else. So check out the stream on YouTube. And then when we get back, I will break it down and upload different segments, as well as all of our radio affiliates will also get the radio version should we get out there, which I'm working on. It's a little different than last time, but Kovalev, Canelo, we've been talking about it today. I do believe that Kovalev has a very good chance of winning this fight. I think that the fight is his to lose. I know that sounds funny, but I do. I think that Canelo is the big favorite, and he's rightfully so. And I disagree with Emily. I don't think that Kovalev can win this fight on a decision, and unless he totally dominates Canelo. I just can't see him totally dominating Canelo. That's the issue I'm having. I think he could win the fight, but I don't think that he's going to totally dominate. Some interesting facts. Kovalev is 7 years older at 36. He is ranked number 1 by the computer in the world by the light heavyweight division. He's got a 4-inch height advantage, 2-inch reach advantage. His record is 34 wins and 3 losses, in which he was stopped twice. His 3 losses, 2 of them came at the hands of Dre. He was stopped in the second fight by body shot. And he was not also knocked out by Elder Alvarez. He has a draw. That was against Grover Young, a fighter that fought for me at one time. He had a draw against him 8 years ago in 2011. 76.32% knockout ratio. He's fought 173 rounds as a pro. When you look at Saul Canelo Alvarez, 391 rounds as a professional, 52 1-2. He's only lost to Floyd Mayweather Jr., and he's currently the WBC, IBF, and WBA world middleweight champion. He's had his 2 draws. One was against Triple G, and he had another one in his 5th professional fight when he fought Jorge Juarez in Tijuana, Mexico. The one thing, whether you like Saul Canelo Alvarez or not, you can't deny his pedigree. He's fought all the best fighters, but like Alex alluded to earlier, he's fought him at the best time. My official prediction, I won't give it to you right now. I am leaning towards Canelo, but I think Kovalev, like Alex said, is an extremely live underdog. I am going to wait and keep my fingers crossed that we will be in Las Vegas and give you my official prediction then. Hey, listen, it was great having you part of the show today. We are taking the next 2 weeks off of live shows. All our radio affiliates will have other shows, so make sure you tune in to our show on the radio dial, as well as if you hadn't checked out our 24-hour, 7-day-a-week television channel, now's a good time. Just go to GinocoUSA.com and sign up, or just go to YouTube and play some shows that you haven't seen. But anyway, make sure you tune in next time. Same bat channel. Until then, I'll leave you with this. Ciao, baby.